So, hi everyone. So in this video lecture, we would like to know how to create a dynamic web pages by using a servlet. Before going to know the servlet, we would like to know what do you mean by CGI? What are the disadvantages having with the CGI? How we are going to overcome that CGI with this servlet we will learn. So the CGI is nothing but common gateway interface. So in the architecture, you may see about the CGI. So interface means which is acting in between the client and the server. So here the CGSL is created for each and every request. So by using a CGI, we can create a dynamic web pages or server-side scripting languages. But with the CGI, there is an disadvantage. That is nothing but whenever the client is requesting to a server through the network, each and every request is being creating one process. So that for each and every process, it requires more time to response or more time required to complete the process. And also the memory space required to execute these process will be also high. So look at this architecture. Here the client is sending the request. Request 1, request 2, request 3. As the number of the requests are increasing here, at the server side, the CGI cell is creating each and every request a process. So as the number of requests increasing from this client, the number of process will also will be increased so that the process load will be a high. So for that purpose, we are going for the server. Before that, you would like to know uh, disadvantages of the server. So let me explain the disadvantages first. So coming to a disadvantage servlet is nothing but the first one is uh, it takes processing time more and which requires more time to execute and the memory space required to save all these requests and responses is also high. So to overcome that one, we are using this servlet. So you may see a servlet is used to create a dynamic web page, which is also known as server-side scripting languages. That means we are having a connection between the front end and the back end applications. So in the first unit and the second unit, that is regarding about the PHP and HTML and XML, we are creating only a static web pages. So with that, now we are going to create a server-side scripting language or dynamic web pages. So that should have a connection between the client as a front end. We are using a servlet as a programming language Java, and the backend we are using a database server. So see here, servlet technology is robust and scalable because of the Java language, because we are creating these web applications by using a Java as our platform. So Java is a platform independent, which is also a robust and which is also a scalable. So generally, the disadvantage with these CGI is nothing but here we are using a platform dependent programming languages like C, C++, Perl, etc. So with that, we are going to create now servlet by using a Java as our front-end applications. So the advantages of servlet is nothing but in the CGI, we have seen that the number of the requests coming from the client may create a process. So the difference between the process and thread, we already know. The process is nothing but which is a heavyweight, and the thread is nothing but which is a lightweight. For the process execution, it may take more time, and whereas come to a thread, it requires only a small amount of time. And here the memory space required for the process is very high, and when compared to a thread, it is very low. So that's why the CGI is not used. So in that sense, servlet came into an existence. Why? Because whenever the client is requesting At the server side, a thread is being created. So when compared to process, thread requires only a small amount of time for the execution or processing time, and also memory space also requires less. So you can see here the advantages. The first one is better performance. That means we are using a request. We are sending some request from the client so that it creates a thread. So it is a small amount of time and small amount of memory only required. So that's why the performance will be high when compared to CGI. And portability. That is nothing but I said that for the front end, I'm using a Java as my web application front end applications. So that it is a platform independent. So that's why it is portable. So it can be accessed to the any type of operating systems. And next one, which is a robust. That means we can't we cannot worry about the garbage collections or the memory leakage. So whether it is full or it is not under or whatever it is, we don't worry about that. And next one, why? Because the JVM will manages overall the servlet. Whatever the Java we are using, that will automatically uh, manages all the things like garbage collections or memory leakages or something. So that can be a one more advantage using of a servlet. And I also said that by using a Java, it is a secured. So next, so I am saying about the servlet. That means we are going to create a dynamic web pages. That means in between the client and the database server, we are having a servlet as one interface. Then how it is going to be work? So let me explain by using client and server architecture. Look at here, this is the client and you're having a server. So that a client is being sending one request to the server as a first request. At the server side, the response is being generated, and whatever the response has been processed here, that is being sent to the client. That is, this scenario is nothing but client and server architecture, which is used as servlet. So in between the client and the server, we are having a servlet. So client is sending us some request. At the server side, it is going to be processed and it is going to be generated, the response, and the generated response is given back to the client again. So this is nothing but the client server architecture. So next, we are having life cycle of a servlet. So life cycle means the creation and what is the work we are doing and the destroy method, that is ending stage. So I'm saying that we are going to create a life cycle for a server. That means how the client is sending the request, how the service is going on, that means what is the work is going on, and how the response is giving back to the client. So this all scenario will be explained by using a life cycle of a server. Generally, and this topic is very important for you externals. It consisting of only of 5 steps. The first step is we have to upload or we have to load the class. So whenever you want to create a servlet, first the class should be loaded. That means we are going to start the process. That means the class should be loaded. Thereafter, whatever the class you have requested or whatever the class you have loaded, for that you have to create instances. That is nothing but objects. Thereafter, actual process started. Init method. So init method is generally nothing but we are going to start the process. Thereafter, service. Thereafter, destroy. So by using a one activity diagram, I can explain it easily. The life cycle. So generally the activity diagram is nothing but which consisting of an initial state and an ending state. In between these two, we are having a service. That is nothing but how we are going to send, how we are going to respond. These two methods can be done by using the ready method. So there is a one self loop. That means as the number of the request is given, the loop will repeats and the response also given back to the client. So that we are using a self loop. The first one is we are going to load the class. Next one, we are going to create the instance for the particular class which we have created. Next, we are going to call the init method. That means a method is going to be started. And at the service side, we are going to have the request and responses. So the client is requesting something to the server, and the server is going to be processed that one, and the response is given back to the client. Thereafter, after the overall the process has been completed, we are going to destroy the method. So the main advantage of using this is nothing but, for example, a client is being requested to open some Gmail. So he's going to type the Gmail in the Google search. And from among that, the database server is searches for the Gmail and the response is given back to the client. So right. So overall process has been completed. Next, we have to destroy the method. Why? Because as the number of the requests and responses have been created by the client that are being saved at the memory. So after the overall completion is being completed, we have to erase the data so that whenever the next request is being processed, that could be used for that one. So that we are going to call the destroy method here. So let me explain each and every step in a brief. So I already said that class to be loaded is nothing but whenever we are going to request for the first time, the class should be loaded into the web container, right? Next, we are going to create the instance. That is, instance is nothing but creating object that can be created only once in the life cycle, right? Next, init method. After creating the servlet instance, init method is used to initialize the servlet. That means we are ready to initialize. We are ready to start the process by using the init method. Service method. So that's why we have used in here self loop. That means they may have number of services. That is, either you can request a number of times or you can have an n number of times responses. So that's why this can be done. Next, after overall the completion of the process, we are going to remove the servlet so that can be used to uh, clean up the resources. Either it is memory or thread, whatever we have created, the overall thing will be clean. That means we are going to remove the instances from that particular service. So that can be used for the next process. So this is about the life cycle of an servlet.